this session to come up for a brief question and answer session. What? Okay. Okay. Yes. If everyone who's here from the morning session, if you'd like to come up as well. The number of things I want to ask the definition of after that talk. It's quite amazing. Something like that. Okay, so this is where you get to, since we had these rapid fire talks and really didn't have time for questions, we have a few minutes now for that. So who wants to be first? Yes. Yes. If there's I think the mic's on. You could just.
Hi, I'm Phil Durbin. I'm a Dataverse developer. I have a question for John Goodhue. You mentioned Clowder, which is something I've heard about here and there, but I don't really know much about it. Could you tell us a little bit more about what Clowder is?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's a package of software tools for gaining. I'm terrible at talking through this mic. Sorry, gaining access to cloud resources, but the web would be a much better source than me.
Thanks.
So I got questions for all of you, but I'll just start with one. So for the Harvard Data Commons, it seems like is this a gated community? Is there some reason why you're doing like? Is it that, I mean, it's being stood up on top of NERC and it's being stood up on top of NESI.
Yes.
And is there a reason that we couldn't make this available to the whole community, although you're obviously going to be focused on features that you understand from Harvard, because there's all these collaborations between the universities as well.
Yeah, so there is no technical reason or even necessarily political reason to make it only part of for the Harvard community. Well, several things. First, we were trying to do some within the institution. We were looking at all the challenges that we have now to track where are the unpublished, the active data, where are they documenting it in a way that then can be made available later after the studies is finished. And so we were trying to solve how do we address that within the community, but using tools that could expand. I mean, it's still open, using interoperable, new tools that could expand to any community in some way, right? But since we were trying to solve a research data management challenge at Harvard, we were asking for money. We're asking for money at Harvard. So there is I mean, it's not that it means that it has to be only for Harvard researchers, but it is a way to be able to track what happens within our institution. At the end, this is the way we plan to build it. It will depend on permissions. I mean, it could be applied to define the community in a different way and be the community BU, Harvard, MIT, Northeastern, UMass, for example, and that for some data sets that are shared across, this is the community. So it's completely, the idea is to make it completely extensible. Not only that you could take, I mean, some of the idea of that dashboard or that interface to track some of that information, it could be very useful to the administration of one institution, right? And so you might want to have your dashboard BU within what data sets are active in that community. So each one has a different view, but are using the same tools.
Yeah, so
I hope that helps. And yeah, if you want
to follow up with Mercedes, because we're working on this together, is that the reason why it's Harvard is because also we're interfacing with the libraries, and the entirety of the digital repository service that is the Harvard's collection would be a part of that. The whole framework and what we're designing, we're not designing on our own. We'll design it with a number of different partners. So the framework itself would be available for other people to emulate, right? So.
Yeah, but there's a difference of the framework being reproducible. Like Dataverse, you have multiple Dataverses.
Sure.
There's also Harvard Dataverse where a lot of people host their data sets.
Right.
I was wondering if this was one model or the other, where you're just assuming other people reproduce it, or
No, I
Or you
mean,
think about building a service that other people, at least regionally, using the same resource can be a part of.
the idea, especially like with the Dataverse front end and then some other collaborations that are happening in that space, is that the front end of the metadata is federated all over.
Good.
And at some point, you have to decide who and how you give access to stuff like that. And so this impact group that's doing all sorts of research has
so
cool ways to do
we
that.
won't build it in a
Yeah.
way that it's only usable for Harvard. It could extend that if the data sets are
okay. That'd be really-
are
sounds very cool.
collaboration across.
So this is a ironic question. In multiple senses. I wasn't the guy working on this directly, so I hope I can phrase this question directly, but my group works on, we have an HPC center, and we've also been experimenting with OpenStack for a few years. And it's been, I want to say, a year and a half or more since we last looked, but one thing we were interested in doing with Ironic was basically we have a node that is running normal VMs in OpenStack, and then we also have this HPC side, and we want to say, well, we don't need so many VMs right now. Let's make those nodes that were running VMs bare metal and make them HPC nodes. So spin them up, provision them using Pixie Boot, normal stuff over there. And then, our VM side needs more stuff, so let's turn off the jobs over here and put it back in and let it become a normal VM thing. Now, when our team looked at this, with Ironic as of a year and a half or 2 years ago, they couldn't figure out a way to do it. I'm wondering if that's feasible now.
You're basically asking a workflow question and a systems management question, which is not something the community has actually solved in this regard specifically. It's kind of, in a sense, it would be the holy grail, except people also want to be able to track these machines down and be able to service them as needed. So it ends up in this weird situation of, have I architected something, or did it just magically deploy in a way that's didn't want it or can't actually operate it?
Okay.
So I would say if you develop tooling to do that, many people will be interested, but many people won't be able to leverage that tooling at the same time.
Sure. Thanks.
I should just add one thing to that, which is that I believe the scenario you just described is precisely the goal of the Elastic Secure Infrastructure project, which has been responsible for contributing a lot of the multi-tenant features to Ironic. That's something that my folks work on. We do hope to have, within 6 months or a year, a tool that will let you quickly either power down a host or maybe even kexec it for a new user with a different boot volume, which should let you do exactly what you said, move workloads from HPC to cloud and back very easily. There is also a nasty little network provisioning bugbear that we haven't quite solved yet, but it's another thing that's in the works. Moments away. In fact, it should be happening now. If I shut up, we could start the birds of a feather. I have one more question for Julia since I'm standing here. Speaking of ESI, we were talking about a year ago, I think, about boot from volume support in Ironic, and I wonder if that's on the roadmap or if it's already done or something you're still thinking about.
It was implemented two and a half years ago, I think.
Huh. How'd I miss that? I think I was specifically, at the time I was specifically thinking about booting directly from Ceph RBD, and that was trickier, if I recall.
That is a problem because of no bootloader or not Ramdisk scripting actually supporting a standardized set of kernel arguments to actually articulate what volume to connect to and the authentication issues with Ceph RDB. I believe someone actually implemented support to actually use the iSCSI gateway support in the Cinder driver.
But Cinder volume has been okay for a while.
Cinder volume that's iSCSI backed.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
If there's time for one more, I'm curious about Kubernetes and if it interacts with if it has anything to do with any of your projects.
Well, I know, yeah. At least from my project standpoint, people are using Ironic to deploy Kubernetes clusters, but it's all mechanics at that point.
Oh, well, if you have one more. Okay, there's nobody here representing Open Fabrics, is there? None of you. Ah. No, the talk this morning about Open Fabrics. Oh, Open. Oh, well, if you can answer the question, because the question was going to be about interconnects. Okay, right. I have one for Julia then. When you said kexec, you must be using a Linux BIOS. Which one?
Not yet.
Okay, so how do you kexec?
We run a persistent agent, or we kexec from the running RAM disk.
So you keep Linux round in the RAM disk, and then that kexecs. Okay.
So I asked a few people that sort of were part of the core organizing to get up and say a few closing remarks. But while they're getting up there, I guess I have one more question. So for the Fabric stuff, I know, but I get to cheat. For the Fabric stuff, it seemed like it'd be valuable even internal to the data center. Like, can I set up some open cloud testbed nodes and then actually use to multiple ports on this Fabric connector you're giving us?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's
Okay,
definitely something that can happen.